The following episode most likely contains graphic language, details of violence, and murder, and may not be suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 56 of Murder with My Mother, the true crime podcast, where I talk murder with my mother.
What's up, everybody?
2 weeks.
We made it. I think we're a little haggard, and
yeah, it's been fun. Well, we promised you guys a video, but there's a lot of stuff we got to fit into the day, and doing my hair and makeup is not a priority. So you guys are getting another audio. Woo.
And you guys should be thankful because we look as ugly as fuck right now.
We look beautiful. We're just two stunning beauties right now. Two stunning, sweaty, stinky beauties. Well, since our last episode, there hasn't really been a whole lot because it's only been 2 weeks. Usually we kind of, check in every 4 weeks, but maybe 5. So thank you guys for hanging on. But we did actually have some things. We've had quite a few things happen locally, but something that I wanted to touch on is on Sunday, June 16th, the community of Surrey, B.C., so this hits pretty close to home. Actually, where we record is technically not Surrey, but where this event took place, it was probably, 10-minute drive from here?
I don't even think even.
Yeah, so Tori Dunn was violently and tragically killed in her home. She was the owner of Dunright Landscaping Services and was a light to everyone who knew her. It is said that Tori and her fiancé had returned home after celebrating a birthday. Tori was falling asleep on the couch and her fiancé was using the bathroom when he heard her scream and rushed in to see a man cornering her. The home invader, later identified as a repeat offender with a history of violent crimes, including on an aggravated assault on May 26th of this year, stabbed Tori and then jumped off the balcony when her fiancé came out of the bathroom. He was swiftly apprehended by a dog team and taken into custody and held on other offenses. The loss of Tori has left her family and friends in deep mourning, grappling with profound grief, anger, and confusion. So,
I can't even imagine walking out of the bathroom and that's happening in my house.
That because you should be safe in your own home.
Yeah.
And also just sleeping on the couch. Like, this is something everyone's done. You're in your own home. You're thinking you're safe.
I just did it yesterday without my door locked. So.
Yeah. And thinking about that in that kind of light is like even more scary.
Yeah. You're at your most vulnerable.
You are. And we always talk about how our country, of course, and our province, I think more specifically, is just full of these people who keep getting in to jail for 5 minutes and then getting let out to do the same thing over and over. I think this guy, I read that he had like 4 or 5 offenses since the beginning of the year. And one of them was that he stabbed a woman. So, I mean, that's exactly what the crime is that he now is probably going to be charged with murder.
And I think he was seen just cruising around the neighborhood with a knife.
Calmly walking with a knife. I think there's video footage of him taking a sweater off and ditching it in like bushes or something like that. But I mean, obviously it's like Groundhog Day, right? It's like literally talking about the same thing over and over and over again. And we need this to end. We need something to happen for this to stop happening in our communities and keep our members of our community safe in their home, on the streets, at the park, wherever you are, you should be safe. That is our right as a person to be safe, especially inside of our home. And it is being taken from us because of all of these criminals that are loose and keep being turned loose. So the Integrated Homicide Investigation Team is asking anyone with dash camera or surveillance video from the area around the crime scene to contact the information line at 1-877-551-IHIT, which is 4448, or by email at ihitinfo@rcmp-grc.gc.ca. We will also post the GoFundMe link in the show notes. So if you can help in any way, please do. All right. Well, I mean, that's going to just send me on a tangent because, everyone who is one of our listeners, who's a regular listener, has heard me probably go on multiple tangents about keeping these criminals where they belong. And really, it's like these people need to go to jail. They don't need to get bail. They have no business being out in our communities.
And the fact of the matter is that the people that are enforcing the laws even know it. Everyone knows it.
Mm-hmm. Our premier just said it, I think, a couple days ago about this case. Like, something went wrong, and now a family has to pay for that wrongdoing. So, the awareness that someone dangerous is free in our community is the least that we can do, right? Obviously, once this person is named, because we don't know who it is yet.
Because he's being protected.
That's what
until he gets his fair trial.
But that's the criminal justice system, right? Yeah. It's justice for the criminals. So in the case that we're covering today, it has many markers of just that. The awareness that someone dangerous is free in our community helps keep members of our community safe. We like to help bring awareness to cases and, like all of you know, shine a light on injustice in our country. We like to tell the story of who someone was before their life was taken by one of these crimes.
Dangerous offenders are sometimes in hiding. They're hiding in places that seem safe, home, work, walking down the street. And often we don't know that the person is even someone that has a past or has a history because they were able to get out so quickly.
Exactly. Look at even the case where that girl killed her whole entire family with her boyfriend, and now she literally has like a new identity.
Yeah.
The guy on the Greyhound bus that we discussed, he's out living in the community.
We've already touched on the fact that you were working with someone that was a convicted sex offender by yourself, and you had no idea. And you're working alone on a shift with this person
by yourself,
day on,
in like
day
a
off.
confined space. Yeah. So, thankfully nothing happened, but especially at work, you should be protected from these people, especially when it comes to your safety. And in the case we're going to talk about today, the person didn't commit any other violent crimes beforehand, but they have a long trail of deception, like a long trail of lying and scamming and swindling. And that in itself, those are criminal offenses, what he was doing, but it just was never taken seriously until it was too late. And even then, it wasn't really taken seriously.
True enough.
So with that, we will hop right into today's case.
Daniel Levesque was born in Kamloops, B.C. on May the 25th. He was raised in Revelstoke by his mother, Stacy, and father, Stephen. They were high school sweethearts who were now raising their first baby at 20 years old. It is said by family and friends that Daniel was connected to music since a very young age and that he always had a big personality. His mother said he could sing before he talked, but once he started talking, he never stopped.
In 1993, Daniel became a big brother. He took to being a big brother so naturally and loved his brother Christian, who he lovingly referred to as Kiki. His parents split when Daniel and Christian were still very young. They co-parented the boys together. In 1995, when Daniel was 3.5, his family suffered a horrible loss when his little brother Christian died of sudden infant death syndrome. This loss had really shone a light on Daniel's sensitivity, and it was said he was the reason his mother continued on. Although he was young, it was clear that he was a compassionate and caring soul.
When Daniel was 4, his mother met and married Derek Thur, and his father, Stephen, had previously started a relationship with a woman named Lisa. When Daniel was 5, his mother had another son named Joel. A few years later, she had a daughter named Lainey. Daniel was delighted with his role and was said to be a glowing big brother and always super kind to his siblings.
Yeah, his brother did an interview later, and it was said, I think it actually might have been his victim impact statement. And he said, he was my big brother, but he never made fun of me. He never he bullied me. He was who I wanted to be when I grew up. Daniel was a smart kid. He loved music and poetry. Everyone who knew him described him as hilarious and loving. He was sensitive, sweet, trusting, and non-judgmental. Daniel was said to always stick up for the underdog. He He was a straight-A student and had many aspirations as he grew. He was a great friend and very loved in his community. He was a social butterfly. He played the saxophone, but he also taught himself to play the guitar. That always, I can't even teach myself to do anything. So when I hear someone teaching themselves to do like such a cool thing, like play an instrument or, draw or do any of this stuff, I'm always like, man. But he grew up playing sports and loved being active and out with his friends, but music was his true love. He was also said to be a lover of girls from a young age. He also had a strong faith, as he was raised in the church and attended Sunday school as a child. Now, something, I don't think you have it in your notes because I did it after, but one thing I heard his mom say was there were quite a few trials and tribulations, because you can definitely, I can relate to this too. I mean, my firstborn child is like an angel baby, but yours wasn't. But when she was asked on another interview about kind of, did he ever give you any trouble and was he mischievous? She kind of chuckled and was like, he was my first child. And we know how that goes. Like, you grow up together.
Yeah, especially when you're 20.
Exactly. So I had my son at 20 and 8 days before my 20th birthday. And I mean, I think as you continue to have children, obviously that you're going to love all of them equally, but there's that special bond when you have your first child, and especially when you have your first child young. It's like, they kind of, when you give birth to this new version of yourself that you have never met before, because now you're responsible for this little person and you watch them grow, and as the same time they're growing, you're also growing. So I think also being the first child, you get a lot more of the discipline, or not so much discipline, but, you don't get away with as much, especially when your mom's like not that much older than you.
Well, you're the trial kid, right? Like, I mean, I had Danica at 18 and we did totally grow up together. Mm-hmm. However, I think you get more of the reactionary first side of like, what are you doing? And like you react maybe a little too quickly, because you haven't had to be A, responsible for anyone in your life, and B, someone that's testing you nonstop. By the time you have a kid after your first kid,
it's like you're a professional. Yeah. Like you have, and you don't react to the same things. Like my son always says that, like, how come you're not getting her in trouble for that about my daughter? And I'm like, because, it's not
cute.
Yeah.
It's going to end soon.
Yeah. You have a little bit more hindsight of like, okay, I'm not going to react to this, or I'm going to react to that. Like many kids that grew up in smaller towns, when Daniel was 18, he decided that he wanted to move to a bigger city and work in a coffee shop to play his music. Some friends of his swayed him to come to Victoria, B.C. His mother felt excited for him, as he had hoped to go to the big city and make it big while doing what he loved. His family encouraged the move and him chasing his dreams.
I think also Victoria isn't as daunting as like if he was going to move to Vancouver, like Victoria is a big city for people in a small town, but it's really not that big. It's on the island and it's a little,
it's our capital city, but I think that's just because it's where the Parliament buildings are. But Vancouver is definitely a lot more, because you always hear it's rougher, and you always hear people from the island like, oh, I could never move to Vancouver.
Can't even drive in Vancouver.
Yeah, exactly. All of our family's on the island, so we get that. And as you guys know, Mom raised me in Victoria until I was 6. So
in between high school and his move, Daniel had been to Norway to visit his girlfriend, Therese. He had met her when she was briefly in Revelstoke, and they began a long-distance relationship. He did have aspirations to travel more in his life. Mm-hmm.
Well, think about that. You're leaving this small Revelstoke that you've lived in for your whole life, and all of a sudden the world is your oyster, right? You graduate, you have all these aspirations.
You have a girlfriend from another country.
Exactly. Cool, right?
Like that opened up his world, I'm
for sure. Daniel moved to Victoria in June of 2011. He lived with his friend Jackson in an apartment where he rented a room. On June 15th, when Daniel was going to look for some employment and some employment tools at Work BC, and just kind of try to find his new footing, like in the city, he got off the bus outside a 7-Eleven. He saw a sign right on the 7-Eleven that said they were hiring, and so he figured he would go inside. He went inside and he asked to speak to the manager. Out of the back came the manager, Joshua Buxton. He hired Daniel on the spot, and he started the next day.
Josh trained Daniel, and although Josh was a few years older than Daniel, they became close and started a fast friendship. Josh would often take Daniel out for dinners and drinks, buying him things like smokes, which I think when you're young and broke, someone buying you smokes is like
the best.
That's everything. Yeah.
Daniel started steal them from your mom.
Yeah. Daniel started doing an open mic night at a local bar and was often seen there even when he wasn't performing. And I know from living in Victoria in my early 20s, like it's a pretty fucking fun city to live in. They say there's the newlywed and the nearly dead in Victoria. Like there's not a huge scene of people, but there's a big party scene there. Like I could usually find something to do. I would know. It's all going well for me until I got pregnant.
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun. The manager recalled him being there a lot of the time with Josh and said that the two seemed like the best of friends. Josh told Daniel that he came from a wealthy family of lawyers. He said that his family owned law firms in Calgary and Victoria. He said that he was living in one of their upscale condos in downtown Victoria. He said that he was just working at the 7-Eleven basically for something to do, and that he was also doing a mayoral candidate campaign in Victoria. So basically he was helping one of the politicians with his campaign, which we will see as we continue this episode. It's kind of his MO.
And he actually said that he was making a lot more money than he was even making at 7-Eleven.
He said like $60,000.
He said he was making $60,000 managing the Sev and $60,000
your small town, the Sev,
and $60,000 doing his other job also, which was a bunch of bullshit, I think.
Well, we will find out.
Yeah.
When Daniel was in Victoria, he had ended his relationship with his girlfriend, Therese. Josh had told Daniel that he was engaged to someone who lived in Calgary, but that she had also just broken up with him and for no reason. He told Daniel he was in law school, but he had to quit when his father was diagnosed with terminal cancer. He told Daniel his father had passed away just a few months before they had met. He also told Daniel that it was discovered after his father's death that he had a child during an affair, and now the mother was contesting the will because her child was the new heir to the massive fortune. Damn, this guy's got a lot of shit going on.
It seemed like Josh was a victim of many circumstances in his life. Things were never going his way. He'd been through a lot, and kind-hearted Daniel felt bad for Josh. Josh even sent Daniel some texts indicating that he was suicidal. And Daniel took pride in helping his new friend get through hard times.
In the end of July, Josh told Daniel that his mother's law firm was looking for a new legal secretary. Josh said that he thought of him for the position, and after speaking with his mother, she agreed that he would be a great fit. He said he gave high praise, and then Daniel put in his 2-week notice at the 7-Eleven. On July 28th, Josh arranged and paid for Daniel to record some music in a small Victoria studio. Like, could you imagine just meeting this guy and all of a sudden, like, think of how happy Daniel was probably like, holy shit, I won like the friendship lottery.
Yeah, this guy's buying me smokes.
Yeah.
He's like encouraging me to do well in my music. He's paying for a recording.
And they're like always hanging out, and
he's buying him dinners.
Yeah, he's going to get him this good job at this law firm, right? So, and he pretty much like they took to each other super, like Daniel, obviously, again, we know because he was so friendly and so not judgmental, and he could basically, seems like he could have been friends with anybody and not judge them on what they had and what they were going through. So obviously now that this guy has taken an interest in Daniel and he thinks obviously he's pretty cool, it probably was like super exciting for him.
Yeah, and he was talking to his mom a lot about it, like on the phone.
Yeah.
About how cool this guy was, like all the stuff he was doing. On July 31st, he took the ferry over to Vancouver to visit with his mom and grandmother. And he was set to go back to Revelstoke to visit his family in mid-August. And Josh had actually invited Daniel to go on a trip to Cuba with him that his family had paid for. He told him that he bought the tickets for his girlfriend,
his fiance,
but then when the girl broke up with him for no reason, that he still had this ticket and it'd be really cool if Daniel could go with them.
Well, and think about you at 20 years old. Like, I know for myself, again, I had my son at that age, so maybe I was a little less trusting and stuff like that. But right before that, I was like, woohoo, yeah, I'll go with you here. I'll go with you there. Like, you don't have that insight to say, like, especially if there's no why would someone be, telling you things that weren't true?
I'd probably go now.
Yeah, probably. Things were looking really great for Daniel. But as we so often see in the cases that we cover, not everything was as it seemed. He was meeting Josh's mother on August 1st for the orientation. Josh told Daniel that the firm had a clothing budget allowing for suits and finer clothing, and even saying that the great benefits of his future job would cover any dental expenses as well as many other things. But due to his little brother becoming ill, the mother had to reschedule the orientation to August 3rd.
Which I'm sure Daniel was just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, he seemed very easygoing.
Yeah.
Like he was just like, sure, and he already gave us 2 weeks. So obviously he's banking on this job.
Josh had Daniel meet him at his apartment before the orientation. He took the bus. He texted his mother, Stacy, and she wished him luck on his next big venture.
So yeah, like all seems great, right? Okay, it was canceled a couple days ago, but now things are going. Woohoo. So another thing that I had come across in the research and will come out soon, but as well as buying him smokes and taking him for dinner and taking him for drinks, he was, I think, supplying ample amounts of alcohol and cocaine, which when you're in that young phase of your life and, you're away from your family, you're trying to find who you are, and you do go through experimental phases.
100% you do. And I think it just speaks to youth as well. Like you're young, you're willing to pretty much try anything without any kind of thought on, how it's looked at, what it can lead to. And that's why so many people become active in the drug culture when they're young, is because you don't put in very much forethought or.
No. And also just, I think, really, if you think about it, like if someone you're hanging out with all the time is like, they seem like a cool person. They seem like a good person. They have their shit together. They have money. And they're like, hey, you want to do some blow, or you want to do some of this, or you want, I did things that I knew were unsafe and didn't even care about it. So it's like in that time when you're young, you don't make, maybe when you're old too, you don't make sometimes decisions based on that because you don't have experience with that yet.
No, you're fine. You're just, that's the whole thing. It's like, go with the flow, have fun.
Exactly. And he seemed like a very go with the flow. Like, look, he moved like hundreds of kilometers away to a place he didn't know with maybe like 3 friends. And he was brave. He was open to doing all these things. So he was adventurous. At 5 p.m. that day, a 911 call came into the Victoria Police. The man on the phone said that him and another man who had worked for him had been drinking and doing cocaine. He said that they got into an argument but didn't know why, when out of nowhere, he lost it and stabbed this man in the stomach, arm, and head. And after receiving these stabs, in self-defense, he grabbed a hammer and hit his attacker. The man on the phone was Joshua Buxton, but his name was not actually Joshua Buxton. It was Joshua Bredo.
When police arrived, they walked into the apartment that was covered in blood. Police described the scene as chaotic. There was blood all over the walls and entranceway, blood on the curtains, and blood inside of the kitchen drawers. They located Josh on the floor, just laying there, covered in blood, and saw another man face down on the couch with his head in pillows and blankets. He had obvious trauma to the back of his head. When they flipped him over, they saw that he was a grayish color and his lips were blue. He was not breathing.
Beside Josh on the floor, they found the head of the hammer. So he had hit him so hard that the head of the hammer actually broke off. And I don't know my way around a hammer too well, but I know you'd have to hit it really hard for it to totally disconnect from the is it called like the arm of the hammer?
Yeah.
Like, see, that's how much I don't know. But that's what I do know is you would have to hit someone with such force that the hammerhead came right off. The man on the couch was Daniel. Paramedics performed CPR and rushed both men to the Victoria General Hospital. Daniel was pronounced dead at 7:44 p.m. on August the 3rd, 2011.
It was noted by a doctor that Josh was only superficially wounded. He didn't even need stitches. He was released less than an hour after he was admitted and taken to the station for questioning. He continued to say that he had hit Daniel in self-defense, but police had their doubts.
They went to the apartment that he shared with Jackson, where he gave them the information to contact Daniel's mother. She was notified the next morning. A memorial was held 6 days after his death in Revelstoke. Almost 1,500 people attended to pay their respects, and the service went for over 3 hours.
And when I was listening to an interview with Daniel's mom, she said one of the first things she said when the police told her that Daniel had been killed, she asked if Josh was okay because they were always together and they were so close. Like she was worried about Josh having also been injured, not knowing, of course.
But what went wrong? How did this person who seemed so loving and caring about his new friend suddenly attack him? Daniel's family and friends knew that this was not in Daniel's nature and that there had to be more to the story.
Joshua Bredo was charged with second-degree murder and detained while police continued the investigation.
Now this guy. So obviously we started the story. We want to give you guys kind of a, you don't know what's coming. But this guy, we don't know what to call him because he has like
so many
7
names.
different aliases that he goes by. But his real name was Joshua Tyler Bredo, and he was born in 1985 in Prince George. He was said to always be interested in politics, and he joined the Young Liberals of Canada, and in 2005, he finished community college. You guys know we don't like to detail too much on the attackers or on the perpetrators.
And I think with this, the only reason that we are going to go into so much detail about his past is just because it's so fucked up.
Well, it's fucked up, and it also kind of gives you like this pattern, right?
Yeah.
It's a trail. It's a trail that he has left behind. It's like a snail trail of deception. I don't know if that's appropriate to say, but when he was working on Dick Harris's campaign in Prince George, he had made public allegations that there was fraudulent actions going on within the campaign. But surprise, surprise, Joshua was lying.
In 2007, going by Joshua Baba, he offered
could pick a better fake last name.
Yeah, like that's
give me my Baba.
He offered to set up a foundation for Corporal Matthew McCauley, who was killed in Afghanistan. He said that he would donate the first $10,000, and then he proceeded to organize a gala dinner fundraiser. He even told the father of Matthew McCauley that the Governor General of Canada would be there. So just a few days before the gala, Joshua canceled the gala, and the family had to pay over $2,000 and found out that the Governor General was never supposed to be there.
Yeah, and then in Calgary, not even that long after that, the same thing happened. He set up a campaign to fight crime and was like, I'm going to donate the first $10,000. First of all, why would you even say that? It's actually probably pretty easy to get a fundraiser going. If that's like what you want to do, you don't have to just lie and say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Like, just basically, you're just a piece of shit.
Well,
really.
You're attention seeking, right? You're trying to, but then like knowing that you'll never be able to back that up is, that's psychopathy.
I have anxiety for these people. Yeah. Like, you're literally saying something that you have absolutely no
intention of following through with. Yeah.
So in 2009, Joshua talked himself into being the campaign manager in Calgary, but once again, it was discovered that he was a liar, and he was fired due to his history of false accusations and false promises. He also lied his way into the role of communications director for Wild Rose Alliance Party, which I'll give it to him. I mean, he could really fucking lie.
Yeah, he was charming. He was said to be really charming. And I mean, he was smart enough to gather the information of the background that he needed to convince people.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's a manipulator,
yeah, that
right?
shows that he's pretty bright.
Well, but I mean, when it's used in such a malicious way, then it's kind of just going to nothing. Now, Josh Chartier, who is now in southeast British Columbia, was helping Dave Wilkes with his campaign. But because Dave Wilkes was a former RCMP officer, Joshua left. And apparently he had ordered some signs, and now David was on the line to pay for them, which he had no idea that he even did that. He was putting on community events for Cranbrook, but the city found out and made an announcement that they weren't working with him and they had no ties to him.
Yeah, they were like trying to distance themselves very quickly.
In 2010, he moved to Victoria and started working at the 7-Eleven. I guess he was just like, you know what, maybe I'm done with the whole political thing and lying.
But he wasn't, because he actually was still trying to do some stuff there.
So he actually lived there with his girlfriend, and that's who the apartment, it was not his parents, it was his girlfriend's apartment. They were actually supposed to get married, but apparently they were happy before Daniel came into the picture. But after that, Josh became distant to his girlfriend, and she was super confused. She had asked him to leave the apartment just a week before Daniel's death. 3 months later, the Crown stayed the second-degree murder charge. The Crown decided there was not enough evidence to proceed, but stayed the charges to gather more useful evidence. So staying the charges is basically like, hey, we are gonna charge you, but right now we just need some more time to pretty much get our ducks in a row.
So, Daniel's body, was sent over to the pathologist in Vancouver, Carol Lee. And Carol Lee determined in the autopsy that Daniel died from cocaine toxicity. Not the 2 blows to the head?
Yeah.
Or
3, because really, one of them, it said that Daniel was trying to defend himself. Yeah. So his hand, I think, took the brunt of that one. But he hit him 3 times with a hammer. So what a coincidence that while he's being struck and violently assaulted, it's actually the cocaine that killed him. So everybody was a little bit up in arms about that, because that was clearly not what had happened. So Joshua Bredo was released back into the community.
In August of 2012, 8 months after his release, the Victoria Integrated Investigation Team used an independent pathologist to do a new autopsy. The findings of this autopsy gave investigators what they needed to lay the appropriate charges. And apparently actually the original doctor changed. She changed her.
Yeah, I think it was
cause of death.
Cocaine toxicity,
combined with violence.
Yes, yeah. Which seems more fitting. I think you can just see that somebody was doing cocaine, but also if you're doing drugs and you're starting to lose a lot of blood, aren't you going to have more of the toxic, you're going to have more on your tox screen? It's probably going to have a higher amount of whatever you were taking.
Well, and also they went back and they did a more thorough investigation, and they could tell just from looking at his hair and looking at other parts of his body, his organs, and the parts of your body that actually, tell the story of how much drugs you're using, that he was a super recreational user, and that it hadn't been happening for very long. He wasn't using mass amounts of cocaine. It was something that they figured he had just started kind of dabbling with,
probably when
recreationally.
He moved there, yeah.
With Josh, most likely.
So the findings of this autopsy gave investigators what they needed to lay the appropriate charges, and in December of 2012, his family held a vigil for accountability in Daniel's case, and over 3,000 people attended.
Friends and Daniel's music teacher in Revelstoke organized a benefit concert for Daniel where his friends performed. It raised over $15,000 for the Daniel Levesque Memorial Scholarship, which they gave away at $500 a year.
Just days later, the RCMP announced that they had arrested, again, Joshua, and charged him this time with first-degree murder. Joshua had deleted a bunch of text messages from his phone on the same day that Daniel had died. The autopsy had also been adjusted. A year later, they announced additional charges of attempted sexual assault and unlawful confinement.
And that's how they got the first degree. So anytime that sexual assault or attempted sexual assault is, in combination with a death, then it can immediately be bumped up to first degree murder.
Because they were trying to do something else to you, and in that you died.
Yeah. So that is premeditation when you're wanting to sexually assault someone.
On January 28th, 2015, Joshua Bredo went on trial. He pled not guilty to all 3 charges. The messages that Josh had deleted indicated that Josh was not interested in a platonic friendship, but that he was in fact obsessed with having a sexual relationship with Daniel. He pretended to be a heterosexual man, not just to Daniel, but also to his unsuspecting girlfriend. One time she came into the 7-Eleven to be like, hey, babe, pop in. And Josh told Daniel that she was like someone high up in 7-Eleven.
Yeah, manager, and she's mean.
And was like, she's mean. Don't, just stay away from her. And so later she said she was like super confused. Like, I wonder like why he was like, avoided me. And like, so not only did he lie about his sexual orientation, but the law firms that he claimed his family owned did not exist. There was no Cuba trip. There was no apartment. His family didn't even have any lawyers in it. Like, he didn't even have any kind of like distant relatives that were families. And all of Joshua Bredo's previous nefarious behaviors had also come to light. A computer at his house had searches on how to knock someone unconscious. A neighbor had heard something vibrating and loud bangs and screams to "let me go" over and over again. The 14-minute 911 call was played. Paramedics and police testified about Joshua's story that he was attacked. They said the blood in the drawers was Daniel's and that they suspected Joshua had had it on his hands when he went to retrieve the knife, which would definitely not back up his story of self-defense. There was even, like we said earlier, blood on the blinds. And apparently it was because Joshua was, after he had called the police, he was waiting, looking out the window to see when they would get there so that he could position himself on the floor.
Of course.
Yeah.
In March of 2015, it was declared a mistrial due to there being many unresolved issues. So he kept asking for continuances over and over. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is a pretty common trick.
But they also apparently, they introduced the computer evidence too late.
Yeah.
And I guess, because they all deserve a fair trial. But if the defense team doesn't know about this beforehand, like long enough, then it can be like, well, we didn't know that, so we had no chance to prepare for this. And there was a publication ban on this, so none of this information was released at the time.
And the poor family, like, this is taking forever.
And over months and months, there were other trials that were scheduled, and then they were adjourned. So in December of 2017, the Jordan decision came into the Canadian Charter of Rights, which basically means that you have 30 months between the time you're charged and before you go to trial. So
everyone has a right to a speedy trial.
Yes, where
even if they're the ones fucking dragging their feet on it.
So this can result in having charges completely dropped, which obviously the family did not want. Everyone wants justice for Daniel, right? Because the ones closest to him know that he did not do anything to deserve this death, right? Sometimes we hear, people are living high-risk lifestyles. Again, there's no excuse for that kind of behavior, even when someone is putting themselves in harm's way. But to be completely manipulated and lied to and then basically sought after for a sexual assault and you die in the process. It's horrible.
Well, and you have to think, like, this whole time, we're now in 2017. His sister and brother, when this happened, were such young, like, basically preteens.
They were 12 and 15.
Yeah, like, imagine that's what you're living through for all of these years. That's 6 years of living through this.
And those are your formative years, right?
And his mom had to keep going whenever trial was back on. She would have to leave the younger kids, and they would have to hear all about, all these details. She did say that she really tried to keep it from them as much as she could.
Well, it was horrible because she was recalling the day when the police came to notify her. And she had said that when Daniel was little and she found the baby unresponsive, he was standing there beside her. And so it was almost like, he was her little like emotional reason to keep going.
Yeah.
Right. And now the little brother had opened the door for the police to come, and his mom had basically collapsed, and it's like let out a blood curdling scream. Like someone said, it was almost like not human, which I can't even
Can't imagine
makes me
either.
feel nauseous even thinking about that. But yeah, so it's like now his little brother is having to grow up so much faster, because this kind of grief really affects you, especially when you're 12, 15 years old, right? That's your big brother.
Those are your formative years too.
Yeah. So in June of 2017, the defense asked for a plea deal, and the Crown, they accepted it. 6 years later, Joshua Bredo pled guilty to manslaughter. So we see this loophole a lot.
Yep.
When you agree to a plea deal, you must divulge the details of what had transpired. Now 32 years old, Joshua detailed that he and Daniel met at the 7-Eleven, and that he was growing sexually attracted to Daniel pretty much from the moment that he saw him. He actually saw him on like the CCTV when he was in the back, and came out probably just like to be like, hey, like he was like a creepy predator. He told Daniel that he was also straight, and he was not. His girlfriend owned the apartment, and he also pretended to be heterosexual. He had a cocaine addiction, and Joshua continued to supply Daniel with alcohol and cocaine, and he even said he could get him a raise.
And then he kept making excuses about why he didn't have his raise yet.
Yeah. He developed an unhealthy obsession with Daniel and continued to lie to impress him. He lied about money he made, about the law firms, like we now know they didn't exist. In fact, he was actually estranged from his family, which is a surprise to me because, well, it's not. I'm just kidding, because this guy seems like, imagine what he was like as a child, and like you continuously burn bridges.
He was already scamming at 16.
That's what I mean.
So he was probably a scammer right from the time he was really little.
Yeah, he was basically just desperate for Daniel's attention. He would give him gifts and manipulate him into spending time with him, paying for the recording at the studio, smokes, gifts, dinner, drinks. And this is almost like like he was grooming him, but an unsuspecting Daniel had no fucking idea what was going on. He just thinks like, wow, this guy's
which people
cool.
don't when they're being groomed.
No. So he misled and manipulated Daniel without his knowledge with all these lies.
He was fired at the end of July from 7-Eleven. His girlfriend broke up with him and kicked him out of the apartment, but he still continued to lie to Daniel about the trip, the job, the friendship. It was all lies. He wanted to hang out to celebrate
the new career, that he's gonna
job,
have, knowing that he's not even getting this job because his law firm doesn't even exist.
And desperate to keep up the facade, he got deeper into lies and was doing more and more cocaine, which I don't even know how he was affording the cocaine.
I don't know either, but apparently, well, I mean, there's other ways you can pay for things, especially if you don't mind doing things like that, I guess, which when you get desperate enough, I don't know, this guy seems like he was just desperate for everything, but he said, and remember, all of this is what he said. So even when someone's like, I'm going to tell the whole truth and nothing about the truth, most of the time they're not telling the full truth, because they can't.
You just pled innocent for 6 years.
Yeah. And now all of a sudden you're like, yeah. So he said that he was actually up for days when him and Daniel had hung out that day. He was up for days doing cocaine.
Oh, God.
So Joshua said that Daniel had actually started to question him about everything, and it wasn't making sense, because when he got there, he was like, hey, I'm so sorry. Actually, the orientation's canceled again. So probably, I mean, Daniel's mother does not think that he even was like, he was probably like, oh, okay, well, we'll do it in a couple days. You seemed very easygoing. But in Joshua's story, he said that Daniel basically got all mad.
Ended the friendship.
Yeah, he said he realized that he was lying about everything, and they started arguing, and Daniel ended the friendship, tried to leave, and Josh stopped him. And Josh was much bigger than Daniel.
Yeah.
He was 6 years older than him, and he basically overpowered him. Daniel yelled and told him to let him go. The embarrassment and realizing that Daniel would probably tell everyone what had transpired took over, and he said that he struck Daniel 3 times in the head with a hammer. The hammer broke. Daniel was trying to defend himself, and he was hit in the hand and head. He continued to try to leave. He ran towards the door and struggled as Josh continued to overpower him. Daniel was bleeding profusely as Josh pushed him around the apartment. Daniel tried to leave again, yelling, "Let me go, let me go."
He even opened the door and yelled, "Help me."
I know. And it's so sad because think of the neighbors. Like, if you think something's happening, most of the time, people mind their own business. Which, if I were to listen to someone yelling that, I mean, I always get in trouble for this. Like the other day, I saw some kid pass out on the bench, and his friend was like, call the ambulance, call the ambulance. So I went over, and I'm like, oh my God, are you okay? And the kid got up. Carlos was like, do not go over there, babe. You don't know you don't know what they're doing. And I'm like, babe, he could be in trouble. He could need help. The kid told me to fuck off. So I was like, oh, okay. But sometimes in those situations, people don't take those things seriously.
Could be the only one that someone had.
Josh slammed the door, and Daniel was losing a lot of blood at this point. He lost consciousness and collapsed on the floor. In a panic, Josh grabbed a knife from the drawer and started stabbing himself.
Except for not really, because he just was scratching himself.
Surface. He picked up Daniel and placed him on the couch, face down, putting the knife near Daniel to make it look like he had attacked him. He then called the police. So he had already served between the initial arrest and now he had served 4 years and 9 months in custody. And the beautiful criminal justice system, like if you can sense the sarcasm in my voice,
we have basically like almost 2 years to a year, right? So once they calculated it, it was
4 years and 9 months is what he did.
Yeah, but it was recalculated because of I don't know whose fucking calculator they're using. They always do this.
No, I know, but I don't know why.
Yeah.
Right? No. Because they should serve the time they serve and serve even more than that and probably be somewhere for the rest of their lives. But nope, not in this country. So because he had already served that amount of time, it was recalculated to be 7 years and 2 months. It's like, what is that? Does that make sense? Does it make sense that someone would commit this heinous crime and then if they're in jail for a year, it was actually 2.5 years?
Well, you're not supposed to be in remand for, I don't think.
But you're also not supposed to fucking kill somebody and then, No, it
doesn't make sense.
His total sentence was to be 9 years, 2 months, and 19 days, taking into account the time that he had already served. He was sentenced to 2 years less a day plus 3 years probation.
Big whoop.
Victim impact statements were read by Daniel's family. Joshua said that he was profoundly sorry and basically blamed his actions on cocaine. Due to his short sentence, he was remanded to a provincial facility and not a federal facility.
Joshua Bredo was set to be released in 2019. But even though the family was supposed to be notified, they were not.
So surprising.
And when I was listening to the interview with Daniel's mother, she said that the kids were scared because the date was approaching and they were wondering, how are they going to be notified? Did they have their address?
Yeah, they were anxious.
Were they going to call them? They were anxious because the time was coming up. Mm-hmm. So she called a couple people and she actually found out that he had been released in October of 2018. So he was already out after only serving 16 months.
Now, the thing is, when they release somebody back into our society, as we've just seen now with the case we kind of touched on in the beginning of this episode, a case I can think of a couple cases ago when we covered the man who murdered his wife. Other times, people get released with conditions. And I don't know if the criminal justice system just has so much faith in these people that they're going to adhere to these conditions when nobody is checking in on them. They bring themselves to a parole officer, but half the time they don't.
No. And I mean, we've seen it before. We've known someone who's been released for jail for something serious who never was even living in the place he was supposed to be living in.
No, that's the thing.
Not even the same address.
No. And that's why it's very, I don't know. We just want to bring awareness that the fact that this guy is just out in our community. And based on some posts on his mom's Facebook page, I have seen that he is now living in the Calgary area. And let me tell you some of the names that he goes by. Because, I mean, the parents or the mom, Stacy, she had said, like, it's just like us, what we always say. Oh, Google somebody, do their CSO, check out, do a background search. Like, people think we're crazy, but.
Well, it's saved me from a couple things.
Yeah. So some names that he does go by. So if you guys, go Google this picture, especially if you live in the Calgary area. Even if you don't live in the Calgary area, this guy seems to get around. Yeah. So if you want to keep yourself safe, just avoid anybody named Josh Mizera. Again, I'm sorry if anyone else has these names and people are completely avoiding you, but better safe than sorry. Josh J.T. Tyler. These are quotes from Stacy's Facebook page. Josh Baba, Joshua Thomas Tyler, Josh Chartier, Josh Mitchell, Josh Buxton. So he's not a lawyer. He's a dangerous person. And we want you guys all to be safe.
He's also been still involved with community activism. And there's been a couple communities in the Alberta area that have discovered who he is and have put public proclamations that they want nothing to do with him after finding that out.
Smart.
So he's still up to his old tricks.
He is. And basically what we believe is once you do something like that once, you don't deserve another chance. Maybe our criminal justice system disagrees with us, but I do not believe that everybody can be rehabilitated, especially if from such a young age, all you've done is manipulate and swindle and talk your way into all these situations that you don't ever make it out of. So I just wanted to thank Stacy. I messaged her and we are going to be in contact. I didn't get to talk to her before we did this episode, but I was thinking of, talking to her and kind of going over some of the things she said on our next episode. So hopefully, everybody out there stay safe because, today's all we have. And I think I said that last time, feeling real. But it's true because something like this really puts into perspective that, you're falling asleep on your couch in your own home and someone comes in and attacks you. You're at work and you're just friendly and somebody completely manipulates you and lures you to your death, basically, with lies. So I just wanted to continue to send support and love to Daniel's and Tori's family and the family of everyone who has not just been a victim of a crime, but a victim of the criminal justice system of Canada. Things need to change. Please write us, continue to share your stories, continue to share cases with us that bring this to light. We love trying to make a change and using our platform and our voices to try to make a difference, right?
Right.
So with that being said, follow us on our social media platforms, Murder with My Mother Podcast. Email us, murderwithmymotherpodcast@gmail.com. Donate to the Patreon, like, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell people you don't even like, really.
Tell anyone. And
tell anyone.
It's working because we just got a whole bunch of new followers in the last 2 weeks. So thank you everyone that has continued to follow us and our new followers also.
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to Kaylee and Haley, which are two people that messaged us.
Excellent.
It's nice and rhyme names, easier for me to remember. And yeah, I think we've had 100 new followers in the last 3 weeks. So
excellent.
Yeah. So continue to follow us, continue to listen. We love you guys. And I think for the next episode, we're probably going to veer into a case that's not Canadian that doesn't, because in Canada, you can basically only find this person did this before and now they're going to do it again. And then they're out of jail. And then so I know that it's a broken record for you guys to hear me talk about this, but I feel very deeply about making a difference in our country because my children will grow up here. And then their children will grow up here unless we move to Spain or something, which I'm thinking about it.
There's probably cases there too.
There probably is, but I don't think it's I'm definitely not moving to South Africa because apparently they're even worse than we are. Just if I have any South African listeners, message me.
Safe.
Well, stay safe. Yeah. But it's the same thing with the criminal justice system. Apparently they are more focused on that their criminals can rehabilitate, which not everybody can be rehabilitated. So, yeah, next time we'll...
Hopefully you'll see us next time.
Yeah. Sorry, we had a long day and hair and makeup wasn't in the cards. So maybe we'll just show you guys what we really look like. And then it'll be like, you lost 600 followers. Just kidding.
See you next time, everybody.
Bye, guys. Have a good one. Well, hold on. Maybe I should exit properly. Hold on. This has been episode 56 of Murder with My Mother, the true crime podcast where I talk murder with my mother. Bye, guys.